It's unbelievable. I started thinking about the Northwest Passage seriously, about doing a transit in 1982. Instead, I went around the world the other way, but I started looking at it, and it just seemed to be impossible. Willie DeRoos was the first small boat to make it through the passage in 1977, and he came from the east to the west. 100 years ago, Amundsen went through. It took him 3 years. He spent 2 years iced in Joahaven. Cut away to 2009, 2010, 12 boats. All 12 boats that tried it this year made it through. 3 from the west going east and 9 going the other way. There were some dicey moments, but by and large it was doable, passable. That's got to be due to climate change and the warming. We talked with people up. There's no debate in that end of the world. There's no debate among the Inuits and the leaders and the hunters and the communities. It's not a political thing. It's happened. They're trying to get their lives back together. They're trying to figure out what to teach their sons and daughters and how to hunt, because it's all changed. The ice isn't there. The ice to the north of the passage we went through is broken up over the past few years. Part of the problem for us was those big chunks have migrated down into the traditional passage for boats like this. We're not an icebreaker, so it has to be open. Those multi-year ice chunks migrate down and get clogged up in some different passages. That's a problem for boats like this. There'll be a year here sometime when nobody can get through. That doesn't mean that it's getting better or that the climate is once again swinging the other way. It means that all that ice that's melted and broken off has just simply clogged up the passages. So we didn't know. When we left from Seattle, you have to stage at Barrow, and you wait for the ice to give you a lead, and then you start in. And if you come out 3,000 miles later, you've made it. You have to get very deep in that passage when you go west to east. You have to get about 85% of the way through before you know if you're going to make it. And if you don't make it, there's not time to turn around and go out the other end. You're going to spend a year in the ice. There's no question about it.
What time of year do you go through the passage?
You need to be at Barrow if you're coming from this way. Your open months are July, August until about mid-September historically. If you're not out of there by mid-September, pack a lunch. You're going to stay a long time. So we were at Barrow about the beginning of July. Our onboard educator, Zita Strickland, came up about then, joined the boat, and then we couldn't move. We were stuck there for 2 weeks, anchored in the Chukchi Sea. There's no marina there, so you're dodging ice floes. We very nearly... background noise. You don't hear that up there. Could be a helicopter, though. You don't know if you're going to make it through. So a lead opens, you progress. There are ice charts. Canadians do a great job of providing daily ice charts, and you see where you might be able to go. And at the choke points, you can't. You just have to wait. And those waiting times were pretty special in remote places. We got to hike. We followed enormous bear tracks, and they followed us. We had some great bonfires on the beach while we were waiting. But the anxious part is you don't know. The day before we made it out, the water between the pack ice was forming slush. It was freezing as we were looking at it. It was getting thicker. Logan and I consulted a chart. We saw a little cove. We thought we might go in and just let this pass. And then I read in the pilot book about a boat in 1987, went in that same cove for the same reason and came out a year later. It got trapped. So we decided not to do that. We pushed on, doing about a mile an hour as we were weaving around ice floes, and eventually we found some openings.
Is there an established track now, or is there a number of options and you just pick the right one based on the moving ice?
It's based on the moving ice. The track that we followed actually is a track that very, very seldom is open. The traditional track was closed when you come out by Resolute. We went through Bellet Strait. That's almost always clogged with ice. You get in, there's a big, big current. We went in, I think, going about 6 knots, and we came out the other side doing 14. So if there's an ice clog in the middle of that and you've got that much current against you, you're in deep kimchi again.
Any kind of boat go through? Or you need something special?
Well, you know, we all have our opinions about that. So we're motoring along in an ice floe one day, and we got a little call on the radio. It sounded like a pitiful little call, and we looked around, and attached to an ice floe was a 16-foot open boat. On board were two Special Forces guys from England who had decided to try and do the passage in an open boat. They bought that boat in Annapolis. We were at the Annapolis Boat Show, all of us. The year they bought it, saw the little boat. It's something you might take camping or might be comfortable here in San Diego. So we launched the dinghy and went over to, you know, we thought, gee, what a couple of wingnuts. We went over and they were anything but, I've got to tell you. In an open boat, they could sleep with their head under a little canopy, but here they're standing with ice all around them, anchored to an ice floe, sort of drifting, big grins on their faces, obviously two fit guys, wearing a polo shirt, sort of, it looked like pressed khaki pants and Crocs. How you do that on that boat, I have no idea. But they were just as happy as could be. They'd been in war for 2 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, and this was something they wanted to do. So they were rowing, they were portaging, they were stuck, they made it to Joahaven, and they're going to go back next year and see if they can finish it. So any kind of boat, you know, I think the Canadian Coast Guard takes their role seriously. They're there to help, and I think it's irresponsible for somebody to go up and think that the Coast Guard is going to bail them out if they've not prepared, if, you know, they don't have a suitable boat. You know, I thought there were some questionable boats that came through, but they all made it, so who am I to say? We could have gotten stuck as well. These guys weren't looking for any assistance. They'd spent a couple of weeks with their boat up on an ice floe just making a camp on a piece of ice because it was going faster than they could.